Katya, you're doing a book haul. Didn't you do a video about unhauling close to 200 books and you never do book hauls? So the answer is yes, that's true. But I am doing a book haul. This is the exception. Anyway, hi everyone. If you're new here, I'm Katya and I love books. This is Milo, if you can see him in frame, I'm not sure. If you're regular, the last couple of weeks I have been missing due to COVID. COVID whooped my butt and my ability to speak articulately, apparently. I'm through the worst of the symptoms, found it really draining, but my energy and concentration levels are coming back up. So I'm really happy about that, and I'm doing a video. I feel like I've got a hot flush happening right now. Anyway, this video, I have to say, is not sponsored in any way by Tilted Access, and I would just like to rave about them because that's how I'm feeling about them. I love what I love when I love it, and this is it at the moment. Especially this particular book because it's also doubling as a fan. Anyway, my channel is so small that I don't even know why I'm explaining that I'm not sponsored, because you probably already know that. Basically, I did a haul of about 24 books, well, actually 24 books from Tilted Access, including, and that's not counting, pre-order books that I've done as well. This came about because I was organizing and reorganizing my Amazon wish list, and when I was doing that, I realized a third of my wish list came from one publisher, being Tilted Access. So I asked myself, why not be more intentional about how I get my physical books? The Tilted Access website then showed that they have an online store, because not every publisher seems to have that. And I looked up all of the titles. They've got these subscription boxes per year, and all of the titles looked right up my alley. So without further ado, I'm gonna walk you through the physical books that I've got. I like the way Milo's looking at me every now and then, like, why are you talking to yourself? And he's chewing on his lovely treat. Okay, so let's go for it. Book number one, I'm happy to say, is not my fan, so I'll put that away for now. It's Black Box by Shiori Ito, and Black Box details the harrowing experience of sexual assault Shiori Ito faced as a young journalist in Japan, and the national reckoning that followed. So in 2017, Ito went public with the accusation that Noriyuki Yamaguchi, a prominent TV journalist in Japan, had raped her 2 years previously. But when she went to the police after the assault, she was told that it was a black box. It had happened behind closed doors and was therefore unprosecutable. So Ito became aware of the alarming amount of black boxes built into legal and investigative systems in Japan, and the inaccessible economy around legal advice for victims of sexual assault and gender-based violence. From the attitudes of the investigators to the difficulties retrieving time-limited security camera footage, Ito's experience navigates labyrinthine expectations that were placed on victims. Now, upon publication in 2017, Ito's account was integral to the Me Too movement in Japan, and it became a much-needed catalyst for cultural and legal change. As international outlets covered every step of her story, and it was documented in a BBC film called Japan's Secret Shame, her book launched a societal reckoning, and at the end of 2019, Ito won a civil case against Yamaguchi. Her personal story uses journalistic verve to expose that Japan's low official rates of sexual assault mask a culture of victim shaming and institutional failure on the part of the police, law, and media to bring perpetrators to justice. It has a Goodreads rating of 4.43. Book number two is Indigenous Species by Kariani. I'm going to say some of these names wrong. Kariani Baroka. And a young girl is abducted and smuggled aboard a ship bound upstream on an Indonesian river through a landscape scarred by ecological destruction and historical greed. Now, as her captors take her deeper into the jungle, her fear is compounded by the sense that this jungle is a place of violence, destruction, and jeopardy. But it is also a place from which she herself is indigenous, and if she can root herself back into the landscape and languages, she may actually yet save herself. So the author addresses pollution, consumerism, and habitat destruction with a poet's sensibility, and her frenetic neon artwork, inspired by temporary contemporary glitch artists while incorporating traditional motifs, aims to overturn our ideas of the jungle as a place of threatening darkness. This has a Goodreads rating of 4.11, and I can use it as a fan again, just temporarily. So number 3 is Tome of Sand by Gitanjali Sri. This book was just recently named the 2022 International Booker Prize winner, so for translated fiction. An 80-year-old woman slips into a deep depression at the death of her husband and then resurfaces to gain a new lease on life. It's a bit of a chunker, but it sounds fascinating. Her determination to fly in the face of convention, including striking up a friendship with a hijra, which is a trans woman in India and Pakistan. The latter is used to thinking of herself, that's a daughter, as really modern, or the most modern of the two. So she's a little bit baffled about her 80-year-old mum suddenly having this new attitude. Now, at the older woman's insistence, they travel back to Pakistan and they confront the unresolved trauma of the mother's teenage experiences of partition and re-evaluate what it means to be a mother, a daughter, a woman, and a feminist. No eating the books. Shoop, shoop, shoop. I know you puppy tendencies there. So, it is a book that manages to talk about the destructive nature of borders and boundaries, including those between religions, countries, and genders. And apparently the novel has a playful tone and exuberant wordplay, making it an engaging and funny read. Goodreads rating of 4.1. I know you don't like me talking really loud, but I have to because I'm talking to the camera. Okay? Okay, so the next one is Father May Be an Elephant and Mother Only a Small Basket. No. Oh, it's your phone. It's okay. Carry on. So, father may be an elephant and mother only a small basket, but... Gogu Shaimala's stories dissolve borders as they work their magic on orthodox forms of realism, psychic allegory, and political fable. Whether describing the setting sun or the way that people are gathered at a village council like thickly strewn grain on the threshing floor. The varied rhythms of Dalit drum or a young woman astride her favorite buffalo. Shaimala walks us through a world that is at once particular and small and simultaneously universal. So I love the sound of that one. That was your Kong. Bringing your Kong. I'm not filling your Kong. Not filling your Kong right now. Book number 4 has a Goodreads rating of 4.09. And then we go on to number 5. Killing Kanoko, and also Wild Grass and the Riverbank. Now widely taught as a feminist classic, the first book or novella, Killing Kanoko, is a defiantly autobiographical exploration of sexuality, community, and postpartum depression, featuring some of Ito's most famous poems. Set simultaneously in the California desert and Japan, Wild Grass on the Riverbank, that's the second novella, focuses on migration, nature, and movement. Apparently it is at once grotesque and vertiginous. This collection interweaves mythologies, language, sexuality, and place into a genre-busting narrative of what it means to be a migrant. Goodreads rating of 4.0. Number 6, The Devil's Dance. Oh, this is not it. The Devil's Dance. This was unavailable, so I'll have to wait to read it. I'm sure that it will be sent through. On New Year's Eve 1938, Abdullah, a writer, is taken by Soviet secret police and thrown into a Tashkent prison. So he distracts himself from his physical and psychological torture by attempting to reconstruct mentally the novel he was writing at the time of his arrest. His novel is based on the tragic life of the Uzbek poet Queen, I'm going to say this wrong, Oykson. She was married to 3 khans in succession, and he begins to identify with the protagonist more and more during his imprisonment. And at some stage, Abdullah has perhaps got an inability to tell the difference between fact and fiction. Devil's Dance was banned, or the author was banned in Uzbekistan for 27 years, and apparently The Devil's Dance brings to life the extraordinary culture of 19th century Turkestan, with a world of lavish poetry, recitals, brutal polo matches, and a cosmopolitan and cultural diverse Islam rarely described in Western literature. It has a Goodreads rating of 3.95. Then we go on to this one, Every Fire You Tend, number 7. And this one comes from one of Turkey's most highly regarded writers and tells the story of a granddaughter's reckoning with the suppressed and traumatic memories of her grandmother who survived a genocidal massacre in the Dusapin region of the southeast of Turkey in 1938. It is based on the author's relationship to her own grandmother, and the novel embeds the turmoil of contemporary mass violence within mythic and deep historical timescapes, cracking open the modern history of Turkey to ask greater questions about good and evil, about exile and survival, and about resilience in an age of everyday horror. So it sounds like a really powerful book. It does say on the back that it is a powerful exploration of a still taboo subject and imagines a narrative anchored by the weight of anguish and silence, fueled by mysticism, wisdom, and beauty. Happy stories mostly. This is a collection of 12 stories that queer the norm, inspired by Simon Weil's concept of decreation and drawing on Batak and Christian cultural elements. These tales put queer characters in situations and plots conventionally filled by hetero characters. It has a blend of science fiction, absurdism, and historical or alternative historical realism. Happy Stories Mostly is meant to be a powerful puff of fresh air aimed at destabilizing the heteronormative world and exposing its underlying absences. So I like that idea of, challenging myself and looking at things from a different perspective. Goodreads rating of 3.91. Number 9. A mysterious young woman arrives in Calcutta and moves into a guest house. She finds a soft and silky panty in a leopard skin print in an otherwise empty wardrobe. She thinks the woman who wore it must have a wild sexual nature. A feeling of companionship envelops her. The sexual lives of the 2 women begin to mingle and blur. It's called Panty, exposing our darkest desires and deepest fears when it comes to love. The effect of this book is ferocious storytelling and a deliciously anarchic and deeply unsettling tone. So Goodreads rating of 3.38. Then we go on to 100 Shadows by Hwang Jung-un, an oblique, hard-edged novel tinged with offbeat fantasy. I'm really looking forward to this one. 100 Shadows is set in a slum electronics market in central Seoul, an area earmarked for demolition in a city better known for its shiny skyscrapers and slick pop videos. Here, the awkward, tentative relationship between 2 characters who both dropped out of formal education to work as repair shop assistants is made yet more uncertain by their economic circumstances and their matter-of-fact discussion of a strange recent development, which leaves the reader to make up their own minds as to the nature of this shape-shifting tale. Yep, very much looking forward to it. It does say that it is written, or rather the author, eschews the dreary realism usually employed for societal issues, with her social criticism being no less keen. 100 Shadows is depicting a little-known underside of a society which can be viciously superficial, complicating the shiny, ultra-modern pop culture face which South Korea shows to the world, and actually exploring the things that are a little bit more gritty. As many of you know, I love Korean fiction on paper and on screen, and that includes the shiny stories and the K-dramas, as well as the more gritty ones like Parasite and Deserter Pursuit. So, I'm just going to check to see where the dog is. Oh, it's rating 3.68. Milo! Number 11, The Sad Part Was by... Number 11, The Sad Part Was... I didn't get this one as it was out of print again, so I'll have to wait to read till... Sorry? Number 11. Oh, number 11, The Sad Part Was... I didn't get that particular book. It is currently out of print, so I should be getting it when it is back in print, and I'll have to wait to read it. But Sad Part Was is a witty postmodern collection of stories which riffs on pop culture, experiments with punctuation, flirts with science fiction, and mocks the author's position as an omnipotent author in a metafictional twist. So I'm really curious about the style. Highly literary, the narrative offers an oblique reflection of contemporary Bangkok, exploring often hilarious contradictions of a modernity that is at odds with many traditional Thai ideas on relationships, family, school, and work. It has a Goodreads rating of 3.79. So then we go on to number 12, which is The Impossible Fairy Tales by Han Yu-ju. And The Impossible Fairy Tales tells the story of the nameless child who struggles to make a mark on the world, and her classmate Mio, whose spoiled life is everything the child's is not. So at school, adults are nearly invisible, and the society that children create on their own is marked by soul-crushing hierarchies and an underlying menace. Then one day, after hours, the child sneaks into the classroom to add ominous sentences to her classmates' notebooks, setting in motion a series of catalytic events. It has a Goodreads rating of 3.30. In Abandon, a woman runs away from home, seeking to free herself from the shackles of society and familial attachments. Instead, she devotes her attention to writing a novel. And when she realizes that actually her 5-year-old son, Rue, he's followed her, she struggles with her identity as a mother and the responsibilities that brings, versus the guilty knowledge that she cannot want her own child when his existence requires her to suppress her own dreams. It has a Goodreads rating of 3.66. Number 14, Moving Parts. A teenage prostitute brings a grown man to tears in a pink-walled motel. A naked body falls from the window of a 20-story building. A love-struck young boy holds the dismembered hand of his crush, only to find himself the object of a complex menage a trois. I found the write-up on this really odd. 2 female office workers offer each other consolation in the elevator. In these wry and unsettling stories, the author illuminates something of Bangkok's strangeness of modern cultural life, disarming the reader with surprising charm. Yeah, looking forward to that because I'm really not sure based on the write-up for it. It does say that it's got intensity and delicious horror as well, and that he explores what it means to have a body and to interact with those bodies of others. It has a Goodreads rating of 3.56. Number 15, I'll Go On. This is a story of two sisters, Sora and Nana. When Sora was 10 years old and Nana was 9, their father died in a freak accident at the factory where he worked, and his body was sucked under a huge cogwheel, crushed beyond recognition. Numb with grief, their mother, Aija, gives in to torpor, developing an unhealthy obsession with paradoxical violence implicit in life. As adults, Sora dreams of the past when she discovers, with some shock, that Nana is pregnant. Now, Nana's response to Sora's attempt at being considerate is icy. Can Nagi, the boy who shared their childhoods, help the sisters to break free of Aija's worldview, in which life is ultimately futile and love is always doomed? It has a Goodreads rating of 3.80. Number 16, Tokyo Ueno Station. Born in Fukushima in 1933, which is the same year as the Emperor, Kazu's life is tied by a series of coincidences to Japan's imperial family and to one particular spot in Tokyo, which is the park near Ueno Station. This is where Kazu's life in Tokyo began as a laborer in the run-up to the 1964 Olympics, and later where he ended his days living in the park's vast homeless villages, traumatized by the destruction of the 2011 tsunami and enraged by the announcement of the 2020 Olympics. It is where his unquiet spirit now haunts even in death. So speaking of the 2011 earthquake, tsunami, radiation disaster, I had a really enlightening discussion with the author Julian Sedgwick about his research into the aftermath of that disaster for his novel Tsunami Girl, and I'll link that interview in the video description below for anyone who's interested to know a bit more about it. Tokyo Ueno Station has a Goodreads rating of 3.58. Number 17, Cedric Seeks Bacchus. This is said to be a heartbreaking and humorous rumination on what it means to be in the minority in terms of sexuality, ethnicity, and religion. It's really short, so novella length, drawing on the poet's life as an openly gay writer of Bataknese descent and Christian background. The collection furnishes readers with a book about, well, that is bittersweet and tragic-comic together, and has sort of good news pieced together for encounters which ridicule persecution, loneliness, and also happiness. It has a Goodreads rating of 3.88. Then we go on to the Yogini, and this one sounds fascinating too, with her days split between a passionate marriage and a high-octane television studio job. Homi is a modern young woman until one day she is approached by a yogi in the street, and the mysterious figure follows her everywhere, but is visible only to Homi, who finds him both frightening and inexplicably arousing. Convinced the yogi is fate's manifestation, she embarks on a series of desperate attempts to prove her own free will, much to the alarm of her no-nonsense husband and her rather catty and snobbish mother. Her middle-class Kolkata life and the relationships that define her identity are disturbed to the point of disintegration. Homi ends up in Benares, the holy city on the banks of the Ganges, or the Ganga, where her final battle with fate plays out. It has a Goodreads rating of 3.13. You're not a fan? Not a fan of mine? Mwah. Will you subscribe? Mwah. Will you subscribe? Mwah. Will you subscribe? Number 19 of Strangers and Bees. An Uzbek writer in exile traces the fate of medieval polymath Avid, who shaped Islamic thought and science for centuries, waking from a portentous dream. Uzbek writer Chekhov is convinced that the medieval polymath Avid lives on, condemned to roam the world. So Chekhov plies the same route though his troubles are distinctly modern as he endures the petty humiliations of exile. The novel follows Avicenna in various incarnations, from Ottoman Turkey to medieval Germany and Renaissance Italy. So it's got great scope. Goodreads rating of 3.59. It is a bit chunky again, but sounds fascinating. And we go on to number 20, Where the Wild Ladies Are by Aoko Matsuda. And this is got a collection of different women. A busybody aunt who disapproves of hair removal, a pair of saleswomen hawking portable lanterns, a cheerful lover who visits every night to take a luxurious bath, and a silent housecaller who babysits and cleans while a single mother is out working. Where the Wild Ladies Are is populated by these and many other spirited women who also happen to be ghosts. This is a realm in which jealousy, stubbornness, and other excessive feminine passions are not to be feared, but rather to be cultivated, not to be suppressed. And chances are that a man called Mr. Tay will notice your talents and recruit you, dead or alive, preferably dead, to join his mysterious company. Yeah, this one really, that sounds so good. Goodreads rating of 3.84. Arid Dreams. This one has 13 stories. Ordinary and working class Thailand characters aspire for more but remain suspended in routine. A politician's wife reimagines her life had her husband's accident been fatal. An elevator attendant feels himself wasting away while trapped mobile at his station all day. Witty, insightful, and disturbing, this collection explores class, gender, and disenchantment in a changing world. Number 22, No Presents Please, which follows people in the corners of Mumbai, a bus driver who, denied vacation time, steals a bus to travel home, a slum dweller who catches cats and sells them for pharmaceutical testing, a father at his wit's end who takes his mischievous son to a reform school. In this metropolis, those who seek will find epiphanies in dark movie theatres, the jostle of local trains, and even in roadside keychains and lost thermos flasks. Here, in the shade of an unfurnished overpass, a factory worker and her boyfriend browse through wedding invitations, bearing wealthy couples' affectations. Affectations? No presents, please. And look once more at what they actually own. Number 23, Women Dreaming by Salma. Mihar dreams of freedom and a life with her children. Asiya dreams of her daughter's happiness. Sajida dreams of becoming a doctor. Zubaydah dreams of the day when her family will become free of woes. Parveen dreams of independence, a little space for herself in the world. Mothers, daughters, aunts, sisters, neighbours, in this tiny Muslim village in Tamil Nadu, these women's lives are sustained by the faith that they have in themselves and the everyday compromises that they have to make. So Salma's storytelling, it says here, is crystalline in its simplicity, patient in its unravelling, and enters this interior world of women held together by love, demarcation by religion, and comforted by the courage in dreaming of better futures. It has a Goodreads rating of 3.53. So then we have one that's actually been making the rounds on booktube. Strange Beasts of China. Anyway. In the city of Yong'an, an amateur cryptozoologist is commissioned to uncover the stories of its fabled beasts. These creatures live alongside humans in near inconspicuousness, save that they have greenish skin, serrated earlobes, and strange birthmarks. So, aided by her elusive former professor and his enigmatic assistant, our narrator sets out to document each beast and is slowly drawn deeper into a mystery that threatens her own sense of self. It is said to be part detective story, part metaphysical inquiry. Strange Beasts of China engages existential questions of identity, humanity, love, and morality with whimsy and stylistic verve, and it has a Goodreads rating of 3.78. I am really fascinated to read this because I have seen so many polarized reviews. There are a number of booktubers that I love who love it, and a number who hate it. So I really want to figure out how I feel about it. Yeah. We then have Manashi by Hamid Ismailov. A radio presenter interprets one of his dreams as an initiation by the world of spirits into the role of a Manashi, a Kyrgyz bard and shaman who recites and performs the epic poem Manas, and is revered as someone connected with supernatural forces. Travelling to his native mountainous village populated by Tajiks and Kyrgyz, and unravelling his personal and national history, our hero, Bikesh, instead witnesses a full reenactment of the epic's wrath. Goodreads rating of 3.88. And finally, we have, again, well-known, Love in the Big City by Sang-Young Park, translated from Korean by Anton Her. This is the one longlisted for the 2022 International Booker Prize for Translated Fiction. This is the one. Love in the Big City is an energetic, joyful, and moving novel that depicts Seoul's glittering nighttime world and the bleary-eyed morning after. So Young is a cynical, yet fun-loving Korean student who pinballs from home to class to the beds of recent Tinder matches. He and Jae-hee, his female best friend and roommate, frequent nearby bars, I was going to say pubs, where they push away their anxieties about their love lives, families, and money with rounds of soju and ice-cold Marlboro Reds. Yet over time, even Jae-hee leaves Young to settle down, leaving him alone to care for his ailing mother and to find companionship in a string of relationships with different men, including one whose handsomeness is matched by his coldness, and another who might end up being the actual greatest love of his life. Now on to the books that I pre-ordered. I have got number 27, Chinatown. This is being published on 30th June, and I'm looking forward to it popping through my letterbox in a couple of weeks. So the metro shudders to a halt. An unattended bag has been found. For the narrator, a Vietnamese woman teaching in the Parisian suburbs, a fantastical interior monologue begins, looking back at her own childhood in the early 80s of Hanoi, university studies in Leningrad, and the travails and ironies of life in France as an immigrant and single mother. And I love the sound of that migration from place to place, because my own background has been quite unsettled in terms of going from place to place. So I do love migration stories. And on the 28th of July, there's going to be the publication of Decolonizing Translation. I am so excited for this. It says in recent years there has been a growing conversation re-evaluating the way that literature is written, published and read in the Anglophone world, pushing for a dismantling of the idea of a Western canon and questioning the dominance of English language writing in representing places and communities. Where do we go from here? And what are the implications for literary translation? Can we cast a critical eye over what is and isn't considered? It sounds perfect for me. I mean, fascinating. So what is and isn't considered literature? What is translated into which language and why, and how is the translation carried out, by whom and for whom? This features essays from a number of translators, including Anton Her, who's translated a few of the Korean novels that I have read this year, including Cursed Bunny. And he's just a great translator. On 29th September, in case I stay on that topic too long, on 29th September we go on to So Distant From My Life. A young man from a fictional West African city has one obsession that will determine the fate of his life, and that obsession is migration. He is scraping enough money together, or he does manage to scrape enough money together to make the illegal route across the Sahara and gets to Morocco before being repatriated. Increasingly desperate, Jean-Pierre meets an elderly French widower who, for his part, is despairing at the insurmountable bureaucratic hurdles for his charitable endeavour in Jean-Pierre's country. A window of opportunity opens, but it will also bring tragedy and ultimately a violent death, so this sounds really intriguing. And then on the 27th of October, we have the publication of Rebati, A Life of Trans Activism. Against mainstream publishing preference for trauma-focused memoir, this book is actually set on an individual biography within the much larger context of the potential pitfalls of institutional activism, the role of communal art forms, and marginalization within queer and trans communities. Particularly relevant for an international audience, it is the specificity, or has the specificity, of an Indian context of caste, hijra culture, marginalization of trans men, and how this intersects with a more Western-centric discourse on trans people and trans rights, which is, for me, going to be really informative. Out on the 24th of November, The Opportunist Steal Your Thunder, the first English language collection from one of India's most hard-hitting writers. These poems brilliantly exemplify writing as an act of resistance. That's a write-up. So I'm hoping that's the case and look forward to it. It's supposed to be militant, satirical, and biting, and with the author pulling no punches in eviscerating the paternalistic and patriarchal bourgeois socialists who speak on behalf of others. So that concludes the book haul and the current catalogue from Tilted Access, because I've gone all in and very much wanted to support a publisher that sort of vibes with my tastes. Let me know what you think of these titles, and if you'd like to know a little bit more of Tilted Access, stick around. When I decided to get their whole catalogue, I shamelessly emailed them to ask for a discount. And I had a lovely email back saying I am the biggest order that they've ever had, and yes, I may definitely have a discount. So in effect, where other retailers, including the online Big A shop, had reduced prices on the individual books, it all evened out because, yeah, I did a bulk shop. I know everyone will, not everyone's in the position to buy this many books in one go, but if you're ever able to save up a year's worth budget for books, you might like to consider going directly to your favorite publisher too, or an independent bookshop and, doing a haul all in one. I love that Tilted Access doesn't publish the same thing as many mainstream publishers. Their website highlights them as a non-profit press publishing, mainly work by Asian writers translated into a variety of Englishes. So they go on to say that they were founded in 2015 and we are based in the UK, a state whose former and current imperialism impacts writers in the majority world. This position and those of our individual members informs our practice, which is also an ongoing exploration into alternatives to the hierarchization of certain languages and forms, including forms of translation, to the monoculture of globalization, to culture, narrative, and visual stereotypes, to the commercialization and celebrification of literature and literary translation. We value the work of translation and translators through fair, transparent pay, public acknowledgement, which until recently hasn't been the case for translators, because for a long time we weren't seeing publishers acknowledging translators on book covers. Anyway, as a small non-profit press, our list can represent only a small fraction of the multiplicity of styles and concerns that flourish in writing from the majority world. I've popped their website and contact details in the video description. There is so much more content on their website, so do check it out. And thanks so much for watching. I know I've waxed lyrical, but I did warn you at the start. I love what I love, and yeah, I just go for it. If you like my channel, do remember to like and subscribe and stay shiny. Thank you very much. And sorry, Milo, for keeping you awake, but I think you're actually sleeping now. Right, bye.